Section 15C, the doctrine of no soul Anatta continued. Another example of the attempt to introduce idea of self into the Buddha's teaching is in the well-known words Attadipa Viharata, Attasarana, Ananasarana, which are taken out of context in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. This phrase literally means dwell, making yourselves your island, support, making yourselves your refuge, and not anyone else as your refuge. Those who wish to see a self in Buddhism interpret the words Attadipa and Attasarana, taking self as a lamp, taking self as a refuge. We cannot understand the full meaning and significance of the advice of the Buddha to Ananda unless we take into consideration the background and the context in which these words were spoken. The Buddha was at the time staying at a village called Beluva. It was just 3 months before his death, parinirvana. At this time, he was 80 years old and was suffering from a very serious illness, almost dying. But he thought it was not proper for him to die without breaking it to his disciples who were so near and dear to him. So, with courage and determination, he bore all his pains, got the better of his illness, and recovered. But his health was still poor. After his recovery, he was seated one day in the shade outside his residence. Ananda, the most devoted attendant of the Buddha, went to his beloved master, sat near him, and said, "Sir, I have looked after the health of the Blessed One. I have looked after him in his illness. But at the sight of the illness of the Blessed One, the horizon became dim to me, and my faculties were no longer clear. Yet there was one little consolation. I thought that the Blessed One would not pass away until he had left instructions touching the order of the Sangha." Then the Buddha, full of compassion and human feelings, gently spoke to his devoted and beloved attendant. "Ananda, what does the order of the Sangha expect from me? I have taught the Dhamma, the truth, without making any distinction as exoteric and esoteric. With regard to the truth, the Tathagata has nothing like the closed fist of the teacher. Surely, Ananda, if there is anyone who thinks that he will lead the Sangha and that the Sangha should depend on him, let him set down his instructions. But the Tathagata has no such idea. Why should he then leave instructions concerning the Sangha? I am now old, Ananda, 80 years old, as a worn-out cart has to be kept going by repairs. So it seems to me the body of the Tathagata can only be kept going by repairs. Therefore, Ananda, dwell, making yourselves your island, making yourselves not anyone else your refuge, making the Dhamma your island, the Dhamma your refuge, nothing else your refuge." What the Buddha wanted to convey to Ananda is quite clear. The latter was sad and depressed. He thought that they would all be lonely, helpless, without a refuge, without a leader after their great teacher's death. So the Buddha gave him consolation, courage, and confidence, saying that they should depend on themselves and on the Dhamma he taught, and not on anyone else or on anything else. Here, the question of a metaphysical Atman or self is quite beside the point. Further, the Buddha explained to Ananda how one could be one's own island or refuge, how one could make the Dhamma one's own island or refuge. Through the cultivation of mindfulness or awareness of the body, sensation, mind, and mind objects, there is no talk at all here about an Atman or self. Another reference oft quoted is used by those who try to find Atman in the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha was once seated under a tree in a forest on the way to Orevela from Benares. On that day, 30 friends, all of them young princes, went out on a picnic with their young wives into the same forest. One of the princes, who was unmarried, brought a prostitute with him. While the others were amusing themselves, she purloined some objects of value and disappeared. In their search for her in the forest, they saw the Buddha seated under a tree and asked him whether he had seen a woman. He inquired what was the matter. When they explained, the Buddha asked them, "What do you think, young men? Which is better for you, to search after a woman or to search after yourselves?" Here again, it is a simple and natural question, and there is no justification for introducing far-fetched ideas of a metaphysical Atman or self into the business. They answered that it was better for them to search after themselves. The Buddha then asked them to sit down and explain the Dhamma to them. In the available account in the original text of what he preached to them, not a word is mentioned about an Atman.